Quote, gradually it was disclosed to me that the line separating good and evil passes not through states, nor between classes, nor between political parties either, but right through every human heart and through all human hearts. This line shifts. Inside of us, it oscillates with the years. And even within hearts overwhelmed by evil, one small bridgehead of good is retained. And even in the best of all hearts, there remains an unuprooted small corner of evil. End quote. So the reason I share this quote with you, which is from the Gulag Archipelago by Alexander Solzhenitsyn, is because it highlights the fact that inside all of us, we have the ability to choose between good and evil, between right and wrong. And the reason I bring this up is because on this podcast episode, we are going to discuss things that can be used for either good or evil. And I trust that all of you who hear this will use the information for good and will use the information to help yourself, help your life, and help the people around you. And I trust that you will use this information as a shield and not a sword. Thank you. This episode is brought to you by Excel Coaching Academy. Hey guys, I'm really excited to let you know that I started a mindset coaching business. So what I want to do with this business is I want to help entrepreneurs, business owners, salespeople, leaders, and fitness enthusiasts or athletes develop the right mindset to increase revenue, improve business or performance, and overcome the challenges needed to become the best version of themselves. You can get more information about this by emailing info@excelcoaching.academy. Do whatever and clip it, whatever.
Cool.
But so when we talked first, I know we got into some information there, and I'm really ready to get into the rest of this conversation because I know we're going to have some bits right here to share. So the way I normally do this is if you want to introduce yourself, just kind of say who you are and what you do, and
okay,
we'll go from there.
Okay, so I bought my first house when I was about 1977. And I got involved in working with the very first book ever printed on the subject of body language back there in about 1980. Prior to that, the only thing about body language that anybody ever knew was about Darwin's Book of Evolution and scientific journals. And body language came out, sold about 19 million copies, and really introduced that subject of body language to the world. And then I did talk language in 86. But what was really interesting and what I kicked off was back there in the late 80s, I found myself in Dallas, Texas with the savings and loans and the banking crisis where all the prices dropped like 90%. And I was buying, $80,000 houses for $8,000. And I started that whole sort of like We Buy Houses thing. And then I took that internationally around the world and started the We Buy Houses in various countries, cultures, languages, and different legal jurisdictions across the planet. And then because I then had like 40 years of the study of subliminal science, people were always saying to me, Rick, everybody knows the strategies, but because you know so much about subliminal science, you never say anything, but you just know how to get everybody to want to do the strategy, which is the hard bit. Why don't you ever tell anybody how you do what you do? And I sat down one day and I said, well, no one knew about body language until we wrote books on it. And then I thought, well, you know what, like the way we communicate, 7% of the words we use, 38% the tonality of those words, and 55% subliminals. So I thought, well, you know what, why don't I just do this thing called subliminal science for real estate? And then a lot of guys could learn. You don't have to spend any more money on marketing and overhead. You just use subliminals and you'll probably do 3 times as many transactions. And so I guess my point of difference is that a lot of the guys just get really high rates of transactions. We don't pay too much when we buy clothes. We get in restaurants for free just by using subliminal language, And I guess I'm just the first guy that's come along and actually put written stuff on it where people can start to understand it and go, that's why I had a hunch about that guy. Or that's why I had a gut feeling, which means there were subliminals, but you just didn't have the understanding of what to read. So all I was going to do today is like I could walk you through for the time I walked through the big knock on the door of a house, all the way through to coming out the other side with a contract in my hand. And that's a story I tell only because people then go, I get it. And then they can understand how it all comes together.
Yeah. So, okay, first of all, there's so much to get into. I mean, there's so many different ways we could go with this. Like you hear body language, you hear tonality, you hear all this kind of stuff, and I think that a lot of people that are in sales, like we maybe think that we know about this stuff, but so you said that you're going to walk us through a process, like going through a house, like you're gonna tell us about this.
I think if I do it that way, a lot of people, not only will they learn about the subliminals, but they'll get the aha moments. And a lot of people can relate to when they go to a seller's house in real estate to buy a house. Okay.
Right.
Why does one guy get the sale and the other guy get the, I want to think about it? And if I can bring out all the subliminal language that goes on, then for a lot of people, they go, holy crap, if only I knew that, I could convert more sales. So we can do that.
Yeah, let's do it that way. Yeah, let's do it that way.
Now, as we go along, I'm Australian, so the average American talks at about 120 words a minute. The average Australian talks about 180. And if I get excited, I've been known to gust up to about 220 words a minute. So if I'm getting too fast because I get too excited, just go, Rick, slow it down. Okay.
All right.
So first thing I do is I knock on the door of a house. Okay, so we're going to start straight away. If you knock fast, people will run to the front door to open it. If you knock slow, they will stroll to the front door to open it. So when you have a lot of fun, start knocking on people's doors. Knock slow, and they'll start to stroll. Then start spinning up the knock rate. And listen to them, they'll start running towards the front door. So when they open the front door, because I don't care if it's dry, wet, whatever, I don't want to have a confrontation about who are you, why are you here, what are you trying to sell me. I'm not going to have that happening on the front door. So what I'll do is I'll drop the next bit of subliminal language in. I'll start wiping my feet on the mat. Even if it's dry, it doesn't matter. But as soon as the person's subconscious brain sees me wiping feet on the mat, they automatically go, oh, come on inside, which is great because I'm already moving my feet, so I've sort of already got momentum. I'm on the way in, right? Now, this is the bit. We get into rooms. Rooms have got territories, and people don't understand this. And I'm going to be really generous. Generally speaking, like the woman, she normally owns the kitchen in the house. It's her territory. The guy owns the home office. That's why quite often if a guy goes into the kitchen, Mrs. Smith will say, John, what are you doing in the kitchen? What are you looking for? I know where everything is. Well, tell me what you're looking for, blah, blah. Same thing as a woman goes into a guy's office. He goes, babe, what are you looking for? I know the office looks like it's a total mess, but it's not. I know where everything is. Don't touch anything. Don't touch. They're territories. We're going to be really careful. People don't understand this. We all have territories and zones, which I'll cover in a minute, but houses, offices, cars have territories and zones. And so they all give a different, there's things you can do and things you can't do. For instance, you're always going to be taken into what's called the communal safety room. And that's the room where people don't know you yet. It's usually the living room, the dining room. It's where the TV are, the kids. It's the relaxing, informal room in the house where you get to know strangers. Now, these are important that only certain things happen in certain rooms, because if you do the wrong conversation in the wrong room, your sales are a disaster. It won't come together. And if you want to get a really insight on how important rooms are, the next time someone comes to your house, or you go to someone's house, they knock on the door, say, come on inside. First thing I want you to do is walk straight into their master bedroom, see how you go. Right? And you'll really know quickly you're in the wrong room, right? So rooms. Okay, so when you go in the room, that's where you're going to start. It'll be that communal room. We've all been there. We get invited in. Mrs. Smith says, hey, would you like a cup of tea? Would you like a cup of coffee? Would you like a glass of water? Always get the water, but I'll tell you why. So now we're starting. But I've usually got two things in the lounge room that are a problem. And I want to get people's 100% attention. And I can't afford to have anybody split their focus. So it's got to be everything I'm doing, all the energy that's coming out, the words, the way I do it. The two disturbances you're always going to have when you go to someone's house is the television that'll be on and the kids or the dog. I've got to get rid of both of them. Because if I don't, I'm not going to have control of the environment. So I'm really big on maximum control of the environment. First of all, I can't ask them to turn off their TV. It's their private property. It's in their zone, their territory. They're going to get offended if I'm saying to them, could you turn off your TV? So the way you get the result of the television being turned off, I say, John, let me ask you something. Could you turn that TV down just a little bit for me? Just bring it down just a little bit. And they'll always switch it off. They say, I'll tell you what, I'll turn it off. I go, oh, thank you. Okay. Now, the next thing is to get rid of the kids. You can't just say, listen, your kids are making a lot of noise. Could you send them back to their cage? You can't do that, right? It offends people. So what you do is you can't tell people, can you get your kids out of the room? I mean, you just can't do that. What you got to do is the parents have to decide that their kids have to be out of the room. So the way to do that is if you're trying to have a conversation with me, I'm in that room and I'm saying, hey, what do you do for sports? We're talking. As you're talking, I will direct my attention towards your kids. So as you're talking like this, I go, yeah. And I'll react to what's happening with the kids. Now, when I do that and taking my focus off you, I've just make you less important than your children. And no adult wants to be seen as less important than their kids. Do you understand? So therefore, they'll say, kids, get out of here. Go out and feed the dog or go into your room or whatever. But they'll end up kicking the kids out of that room because they want your undivided attention and the kids would distract me. You understand?
Yep.
Now I got control of that room. Now, in this room is the communal room where people sometimes make a big mistake is they start talking business. You can't. You can't talk business in this room, and you can't talk business in the front yard. You can't talk business in the backyard. Rooms are zoned for certain types of conversation. This communal room is the rapport building room. So, Cody, this is the one where I go, hey, let me ask you something. You know, you're into sports, and you got kids, and you got a dog, and we talk about football, and we talk about all this getting to know you kind of stuff, but we don't talk about why I'm there. Okay, so that's because we're in the wrong room for that. So what happens is, I also know, Cody, that people won't do business with you if they don't like you. So people have to like me first, or they're not going to do business with me. The problem we've got is I've only got about an hour and a half. I haven't got 6 weeks for you to decide if you like me. So I've got to get you to like me really fast. So what I've got to do is I've got to get us into the kitchen because the kitchen is the friend room, the friend zone. Do you notice how whenever you have a party and your friends come over, where does everybody go? The kitchen. Parties always start in the kitchen. They even had a song, parties always start in the kitchen, right? Because that's the friends. You always invite friends into the kitchen. Your friends come over, you're in the kitchen. That's kind of how it is. So if I can move everybody into the kitchen, in their brain, I'm now deemed to be a friend. And once I'm deemed to be a friend, they're more open to doing business with me, but it can't be from this room I'm in now. So what I do there is they'll give me a glass of water. I'll talk to Mr. Smith, Mrs. Smith, and I'll finish my glass of water, put that down on the table, and then I'll start coughing. I might go, and I'll grab the glass of water, which will be empty, and I'll go, wait, and I'll kind of, I know where it is, let me get it, I'm okay. And I'll run to their kitchen to get the glass of water and say, Mr. Smith, don't get up. Look, sorry, I'll get it. Now I'll go to the kitchen to get a glass of water. Except I've now walked into Mrs. Smith's territory. Mrs. Smith will jump up and she'll go, it's okay, let me help you. I'll show you where the tap is, where the glass is. And she'll very politely come in after me to help me get the glass of water. Now I'm in there with Mrs. Smith. I'll get the glass of water. She'll give me the glass of water. Pardon me, I just got an itchy nose. I'm not lying. I just got an itchy nose.
Yeah, it's hard to believe now.
I know, it's hard to believe, right? It's like, yeah, come on. So I'm now with Mrs. Smith in the kitchen. I'm not going to be there for very long before Mr. Smith comes bouncing in. Now, if Mr. Smith doesn't come bouncing in, just giggle and he'll be straight in. Now, I've now got all three of us in the kitchen. And we start chatting. And look, what I've got to do is I'm going to give you some very, very exact questions here that never change. And what I think I might do is people are going to scramble and write them down. But guys, if you're okay, Kobe, some of this stuff, I'll just let people download it later if you're okay, because I've got some very precise stuff. And people just go, well, what comes next? What do you say next? What do you do next? And so I've got a like blueprint, right? People can just get it. Okay, so here are things. I have five very questions, haven't changed for 30 years because I like to get control. First question is, so I'm leaving the kitchen, drinking the water. So let me ask you, John, Mary, why did you want to see me here tonight? The reason I structure it this way is because usually the person you're going to see feels they're in control, they've got the power, and you're the person coming in to sell them something. I've got to reframe it. So I say, let me ask you something, John, Mary, why did you want to see me here tonight? What it does is it basically repositions the whole room that I'm the doctor, you're the patient, you're sick, and I've got the cure. But it's all at a subliminal level. And so now they've got to explain to me what their problem is or what their issue is, okay? That's the first one. Why do you want to see me here today? Blah, 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 blah. Now, when they're talking to me, I want to get the whole reason. So tell me what's going on. Now, when they're telling me why do you want to see me tonight, and they might say, well, we're trying to sell the house. Now, the longer if I nod my head and do this with my hands, they will continue to talk until I stop. So I'll go, and all I have to do is nod my head, keep my palms exposed. You can't see, but I'm like this. Mm-hmm. Now, at a conscious level, people don't see what I'm doing. But at a subconscious level, the subconscious tells the brain, keep on talking, because you haven't told him enough yet. I go, blah, blah. Now, when I want them to stop talking, all I have to do is stop nodding my head and turn my hands over. So hands go from that to that, and they'll stop talking. Right. Now, so then they've told me why they want to see me here tonight. Okay, blah, blah, blah. I want to sell the house. Let me ask you something. At the end of the day, what's the outcome that you would like to achieve here in the time we have? So I want to know what the exit looks like. Because if I go to a movie theater and I can't see where that exit door is, I'm not buying the popcorn. So I want to know what the exit looks like, right? Because I've not come here to look at a house. I've come here to buy a house. And I haven't come here to drink your water. So I want to know what this exit is going to look like. Well, we're hoping you can buy the house. Great. That was the second question. Third question, how much time do we have in order to put this together? So I want to know what time I've got. The last thing, and we've all been through it, Cody, is you get halfway through a presentation and Mrs. Smith says, look, I've got to go and pick up the kids. I'm sorry, but I'll be back in 20 minutes. Or John says, oh, mate, look, I'm going to have to cut you short because I'm going out to see the football, whatever it is. But you're killed. You need to know you've got enough time. I'm going to need about an hour because I've got a big mouth. I could talk with a mouthful of marbles under wet cement. So I know probably how long I'm going to be, right? Now, if I can't get the time that I need, Cody, they say to me, well, yeah, we've got half an hour and then Mary's got to pick up the kids. This is the bit where I think most people get lost. You've got to cut your presentation right there and say, okay, here's what we can do and here's what we can't do. We're not going to get to a stage where I'm going to be able to give you a bucket load of money tonight for this house and get that finished. I think what we can do is tonight I can get an understanding of who you are, you get an understanding of me, I can find out some details, I can get some information, I can go and do some research, and then we will have a second sit down and we'll just nail it. And at the end of that, I can just be cutting you a check on the spot. Now that makes it really exciting for them to go, yeah, great. But I've set the agenda. So there must be an agenda so that people knows when you've come to the end of the agenda, and the agenda is this. Now, the mistake people make is if I'm rushed and I try to put the whole thing together and make an offer to buy the house and then want a second meeting, they will cancel the second meeting on me before I get to the second meeting because they feel they have all the information. They'll check with their friends, their lawyer, the solicitor and the doctor, who will all say, don't do the deal. So whenever you have to cut a meeting, just do the research bit, but to keep the gold, you've got to keep to the second meeting. Otherwise, you'll never have a second meeting. Okay, so now I know that. So I know if I've got the time. And the last question I ask is, who else needs to be here? So you've told me how much time I got. We're okay. You've told me what the outcome is. Okay. And I need to know who else needs to be here tonight that's not here in order for us to make this decision, in order for us to put this to bed tonight. Because I don't want the uninvited guest, which means I finish up and they go, listen, I'm going to speak to my brother-in-law, I'm going to speak to my accountant, I'm going to speak to my lawyer. I want to know who needs to be there that isn't there in order for this to come together. And they might say, well, I need my brother-in-law who's a real estate agent. Well, fantastic. You're here. I'm here. Do you want to use my phone or do you want to use your phone? Let's get him here now. And we'll start talking in 30 minutes when he gets here. So everybody's got to be there. I don't start. The reason is, Cody, if people aren't all there and only some of the people are there, have you ever heard the expression Chinese whispers?
No.
Chinese whispers is when you tell somebody something, then they tell somebody else something, then they tell somebody else something, then they tell somebody else something, and you get down the road, and what that person gets told is nothing like what you said in the very beginning. The whole thing's changed. So therefore, you've got to have everybody at the table that needs to be there. If they say, well, I've got to run it by my accountant or my attorney, just say, look, I tell you what, I'm sure he's a pretty smart guy, right? Yeah. Well, look, we're all pretty smart guys. Let's get together. He's going to have questions. He's intelligent. I think the bottom line is here, we get the money into your bank account. Why don't we rather do this now? Let's go and sue with him at 9 o'clock tomorrow. He can verify that it's legal. He can cross all the T's. He can do all the dots. We could do all the forms in front of your lawyer, and I could write the check, and away we go. Because there's no point in me having a presentation if there's someone who's going to be involved in the process who's not there. Okay.
Right.
So now we're on board. In the kitchen, that's what I've done in the kitchen. They've given me the setup. They've agreed, tick, 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 tick. Righto, we're ready to go. Now we're going to talk business. But I got a problem. I'm in the wrong room. I can't talk business in a kitchen. It has to be in a table, like with tables and chairs. And the reason it has to be this way, Cody, is because in a 24-hour cycle, when we're at work, we sit at a desk with an office and a chair, and our brain actually switches. We go in a business mode which says, this is where I am when I make decisions all day long. When we come home, we get in our pajamas and our little fluffy shoes with moose ears on them and stuff like this. Sometimes if you try to speak to your wife or your spouse or your partner, they'll say, look, babe, I'm not in the mood right now. If you want to speak to me tomorrow at breakfast just before we go to work. Why? Because we're dressed up in our secretary slayers, we're looking at our power suits, and we start to switch into business mode. That's why people want to defer a decision-type making conversation when you're in the wrong room of the house. So when anybody ever says, what have I got, what I want to do, I go, well, I'll tell you what, let me show you. So when people want me to tell them, I say, let me show you. And then by the time I'm doing this, I've already figured out where the table is in the house because it has to be done at a table. This will increase your sales at least 300% simply by doing a presentation as a table instead of in a kitchen, a living room, or anything else, because people's brains switch. So we go to find the table. Cody, people's tables have always got lots of stuff on the table. You can't just push people's stuff off the table and say, clear the crap off the table, because there's always stuff on the table. So you can't get the stuff off the table. And you can't really say to people, could you please clear the table? Because their brain says, well, hang on, this is my table. This is my stuff on my table. Who are you to come into my house and tell me to clear my table? Now, this is all embedded scripts that goes through people's minds. But I have to design it in such a way that it's their decision to clean their own table. So I use what's called the helicopter. And the helicopter is I do this. I only have a clipboard with maybe one or two pieces of paper. Why do I have a clipboard? Because doctors carry a clipboard. The most powerful person in the room is usually the guy carrying the clipboard, because people always perceive them as being the professional, the engineer, the academic guy, the guy that knows what he's doing carries the clipboard. So I normally carry a clipboard. I've only got about one or two pieces of paper on it, and I'll do the helicopter. So I say, let me show you something. Now, I stand above the table, but I'm sitting down now, so I can't really show you. But I stand above the table. There's all the stuff. I go like this. Like I want to land, right? And people quickly start clearing everything off the table so I can put my stuff down. So as I'm putting my stuff down, I sit. And as I sit, the other people seeing me sit will automatically sit. And so now I have everybody that I have to negotiate a house transactions with is sitting at the table. Any questions so far?
Well, I do have some, but I'm going to wait for you to finish.
Okay. So now I'm going to be at the table. Now I want to present the fact that I want to buy the house.
Mm-hmm.
And there might be some paperwork involved. But I've got to be careful how I present the paperwork. Humans we have territory zones. And, well, there's 4 things. Tables have territories, humans have zones. So a human has 3 zones. 0 to 3 inches from the body is the intimate zone, to which we only feel comfortable if that's got our family and our lover within 0 to 3 inches. Otherwise, we get anxious. If other people we don't know or strangers come into our intimacy zone without being invited, the body, the human, gets anxious and it shuts down. When we experience anxiety and we shut down, we actually can't make decisions. So I've got to be very careful about that, especially if I push paperwork into your zone without doing it the correct way. What's called the a private zone, after the intimate zone, runs 12 inches out from the body. So from 12 inches out to the body is the private zone. Within that zone, we allow friends, and that's why you'll find when we shake hands, we bend our arm, the arm goes out. It's about 12 inches for the body. And past 12 inches is what's called the public zone, and that's everybody else we don't know and don't care about, the service guy coming to fix the AC or whatever. And you'll find that whenever we talk to those guys, we speak to them at least 12 inches. Now, the country's a little bit different. The country's 18 inches, and that's why a farmer might extend his arm to shake rather than have a short, because they've got different zonage. Okay. But it might also explain to people why whenever we're outside an elevator or a lift, we're all talking, and we all get into a lift and we all shut down. Everybody's very quiet because everybody starts pressing in on our zones. And when people press in on our zones that shouldn't be there, we get anxious, we go into a state of anxiety, the human body closes down, and we get very quiet. Okay. And so you'll find that when you get in a lift, you'll find how people get down. You'll also find when people get out of the lift, now that I'm making people aware of it, you'll find that as people get out of the lift, the people who are in the lift will move to capture back their zone so they become less anxious. And that's why you'll find the guy that's right next to you, if someone moves over there, he'll actually move over there to buy his own time back, right? And actually you can have a lot of fun with this, because when I learnt this back being a teenager, when people move around the lift to buy their zones back, which they'll do, and you see it, and everybody's just looking into their phone because they feel like they've got to do something to do. It's nervous energy. When people move, I always have a bit of fun. When people move around the lift, I keep looking into my phone, and then I move with them. So if they move one step to the right, I'll move one step to the right. But they don't actually notice I've done it, because it's at a subconscious level. You can have a lot of fun with this stuff, and then people jump out of the lift and think there's something wrong with the lift. Anyway, let's get back to the table. When we sit at a table, we have territories, and we will automatically divide a table in half. So if you and I are sitting at this table right now, you're going to decide half the table's yours and half the table's mine. You can test this if you go into a restaurant with your partner. The next time you guys go to a restaurant with your partner, I do this to my wife all the time. It drives her crazy. Usually the salt, the pepper, the wine, the drink, all the stuff is usually kind of in the middle of the table. When you use the condiments and you put it back 1 inch inside the other person's half. And they won't at a conscious level notice it. They won't see it. But as they're talking to you, their hands will push it back to 1 inch. Now, what drives my wife really frustrates her is that we'll have a glass of wine, or I'll get the salt and pepper, and I constantly keep putting the stuff back 1 inch onto her side of the table, and she's constantly having to push it back. She doesn't know until she realizes what I'm doing, and then she screams and yells at me. But I have a lot of fun with it. I just like that stuff. Anyway, so when you got your document, where people make a mistake with proposals is quite often people will put a proposal in front of someone for the person to look at it. But the other person gets very anxious about that. They'll smile and be polite, but normally what they'll do is, and you'll see it, they'll cross their arms and take a more defensive position, body language position, maybe even lean back on their chair and look down at this thing that you put in front of them, because they're not comfortable with it being there. They didn't ask for it. You've put it into their zone without permission for the document to be there. So when we deliver documents to people, we can only deliver the document halfway across the table to the middle of the table. Now, for me, or for you to look at the document, you've actually got to lean into the document, into the table, to see what it is. And in order to pull it into your zone for you to read it, you've got to extend your hands, get the document for the middle of the table, and pull it towards you, which means you're now deciding to let it in your own zone, through your own territory. But I've also changed the body language. And if I change the body language, I can change the thinking. Because remember, people's body language is based on how you think. You think a certain way, your body language comes off the thinking. So, I might watch a movie without sound and I can just see what's going on and know the whole movie. It drives my wife crazy, of course, but, what you think, I can just read in the language, right? So if I can change the language, I can influence the thinking. So then people have the document in front of them, and what I'll normally do is when I put it on the table, I'll put the document not in front of you. I'll actually put the document in front of your right eye, because it's the way we read a book. If you think about when you read a book, you got the left page and the right page, and the left page represents where you've been, and the right page represents your future. And that's why when we had newspapers, the most expensive part of a newspaper to advertise in was the top right-hand corner of a newspaper, because that's where people always looked at first, because people are always looking for their future, not looking for their past. And if I put it in front of your left eye, you're not going to feel so good about it. But if I put it in front of your right eye, be more excited about it. It's just one of those little things. So anyway, You're looking at the document, and when you're looking at the document, then that becomes another bit, because Cody, I'm still on the wrong side of the table. If I want you to look at a document and I want you to agree with what's on the document, I'm still going to change the positioning, because if I'm on one side of the table and you're on the other, because we have that line, that territory line in the middle, we're going to disagree on a lot of stuff. But I don't really want you to disagree with me. I want you to agree with me. So I've got to move the territory line. I've got to get us both on the same side of the territory line. It's like when you're standing looking at a house with a guy who wants to buy it or sell it. You can't stand opposite the person and have the house over here, because there's a territory line between me and the seller, or me and the buyer. We're going to be arguing and disagree. I've got to move the territory line so that I stand next to the person, not opposite at them, and we look at the house next to each other. And then the house, then there's now the territory line's been moved, and the line sits between the house and us, which means we're together on one side of the line. The house is now on the other side, and now we're in argument with the house, not with each other. Okay, so when I'm sitting here, I've got to get to the other side of the table if I want you to agree and come on board with my proposal to do what I want you to do. You with me so far?
I'm with you. Yep.
Okay. So what I got to do is I got to find an excuse to get around your side of the table and be next to you on your side of the table. If I can get around your side of the table and be next to you, I've moved the territory line. So now the issue becomes the document, not me. Now, depending on whether you're left-handed or you're right-handed, are you right-handed?
I'm right-handed, yep.
Yeah, because you're leaning on your right hand. Okay, so if I come around the table, I'm going to come around and I'm going to be on your left. The reason I'm going to come around on your left is you're right-handed, I'm left-handed. If I come around on your left and we both look at that document together, when you do gestures, you'll do gestures with your right hand because you're right-handed. I will do gestures with my left hand because I'm left-handed. But what it does, it creates an environmental cocoon where with your right hand and my left hand, we will feel like we're in tune with each other. It's just you and me against the world. Now, this has got massive impact, and it really makes a really big change between getting this right and getting it wrong. If I came around to the right-hand side of you right now, and I'm left-handed and you're right-handed, every time you gesture and I gesture, we will actually be building a barrier between you and I, and we're more likely to have conflict and disagreement on things rather than unity had I come around the other side. Now, quite often over the years, I mess it up and I forget what side I'm on, or I don't think it through, and I quickly just say to the guy, hang on a second, let me change sides. And I just quickly change sides. It's that important. But the other thing is I need social permission to get on your side of the table, because if I just walk around your side of the table, the person's going to get upset that I've just walked around your side of the table. They're thinking, why am I over on your side of the table? It's just, people think it's a bit weird. So I've got to get you to invite me to come over to your side of the table. And the way I'll do that is you start to read the document I will start to suggest sections on the document for you to read. So it might be, look, I tell you what, Cody, just look at section 3, paragraph 2. Wait, section 4, paragraph 1. No, wait. Number 5, paragraph 3, down to 3 lines, 4 words into the. Now, what's happening is if I give you 3 instructions very quickly, you can't process. You're going to get a bit bamboozled because you're a bit lost all over the page, and you're going to look at me with, I'm lost, I'm not too sure what to do. Now, that gesture gives me the permission to go, well, sorry, I think I'm screwed. Let me sort this out. Then I can come over with a pen, carrying a pen, and now you'll give me social acceptance to come around your side of the table, get next to you, and show you exactly what the heck I was talking about. You with me so far?
I'm with you.
Now, when I come around, no one likes anybody looking over their shoulder. So it's really important when I come around next to you, I can't be higher than you because it's your house and I want to let you feel like you're in control of all the decision making. You must feel like you're in control of the decision making. Otherwise, you'll get anxious and you'll want to call in what I call more armor and make excuses to why you won't make the decision tonight. So I've got to put you in a position of power, and usually what I'll do is I'll lower myself so I'm at least 1 inch lower than you so that you feel you're more important than me. Remember, if you feel you're more important than me, you're going to keep moving forward, less anxious. It's like Columbo. You'll think, well, this guy's no threat. I'm still my house and I'm the most powerful person in it. You'll keep moving forward. If you feel that your authority is being questioned, then I'm going to get totally different situation. So now, I've now got you, we're now together. I've now moved around your left-hand side. You've got this document in front of you, and we're going to go through it together. One of the things that I'm going to suggest to everybody who's watching this, and I used to do it years ago, but I know better, and I see this where people don't know this stuff, and that is they will put a proposal in front of somebody, and as the person's trying to read it, they will be talking and explaining what's on it. So they'll start explaining what the person's trying to read. The problem we have, guys, and why we can't do that, it's impossible for the brain to read and comprehend as well as listening. The brain just can't do it. It's either going to listen or it's going to read and comprehend. So when we talk and someone's trying to read, people will always default to listening first, reading second. So if I'm trying to read a document, Cody, and you're talking to me, what I'll do is I'll lift my eyes off the page, listen to what you're saying, but at a subliminal subconscious level, my brain will say, let's read it later on when Cody's left. We're not going to get to make a decision for it now because we're not going to get to read it. We have to be socially polite, listen to what he has to say, but we actually make a mental decision not to do this transaction now because we can't do the transaction without reading and comprehending the document, and we can't do that because this guy Cody keeps talking, and we can't sit there and say, could you just shut up so I could read the document? You can't say that. You understand?
Right.
So what we're going to do, I've got to be in control of what you listen to and what you read, knowing you can only take one element in at a time and do one bit at a time. So what I'll do is I'll have a pen. Now, people think pens are for writing, which is one of the things it does, but it does something that's a lot more important. I can control the inputs that go into your brain by the orchestration of this pen. So people will always follow the end of a pen. So what I'll do is when I want you to read something, as I say, everybody try this at home. If I want you to read something on a document, I'll say, Toby, I want you to read paragraph 3. When I move a pen down to a document, your eye train will always follow the end of a pen. So I will take the pen and I'll move it down to the end of section 3 and leave it there. Your eye train will follow the end of that pen and it will read section 3. Now, while you're reading section 3, I will not say a word. If I say a word, I'm going to kiss my deal goodbye. When you're finished reading it, you'll raise your eyes up and look back at me, letting me know that you've finished reading. when you do that, I will bring the pen up off the page and put it next to my head and talk and go, and the reason what I wanted you to get out of question 3 was blah, blah, blah. People at a conscious level don't actually see this. They don't say, hey, Rick, you've got a pen coming out the side of your head. They just don't see it. But I'll go blah, 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 blah. And that's why I think it's really important that together, John, the best thing that we should be talking about today is the guarantee that we have on this proposal, as you'll see in section 5. Now, as I take the pen down to section 5, your eye train will follow the end of the pen and you'll read section 5. And I'll do this for every section of a document so I can control when you're listening and when you're comprehending. If I don't do this, you won't be in a decision tonight where you'll make a decision and feel comfortable about it and informed in order to sign off a document to sell me a house. Now, if you're finished reading and you continue reading another section, people don't usually, they'll just look up at you when they finish the section. But if you continue reading, all I do is just tap the paper twice. By tapping it twice, that will break your eye train and you'll immediately pop your eyes back. I'll go, oh, like this, yes, right? And then I go blah, blah, blah. And so that's the way I control the inputs, the outputs. Okay? Because you can't talk at people when they're trying to read.
Right.
Okay. They're just some basic core components. And then what I'll do is when I want people to sign a document, I don't ask them to sign a document. There's 2 things we were taught when we were small children. Don't talk to strangers and don't sign anything. So they're 2 what I call trigger words. So there's 2 things you can't, as soon as you say talk to strangers, blah, people, blah, or sign anything, they won't. So you can never ask anybody to sign anything. So what I do it is more subliminally. What I'll normally do is I normally have 2 people on that clipboard. I normally have 2 pieces of paper of everything. I say, do you know what we should do? Now, depending on what country I'm in, and whether people use lawyers, some countries they don't use lawyers, some people they use lawyers. So what I'll do, I say, tell you what we'll do. Why don't we write on a piece of paper what we want to do, and then we'll get the guys who are smarter than us, make it more kind of official so that they do what they do. But probably they're going to look at us like we're a bit crazy if we don't know what we want to do. So let's get a piece of paper and write down what we want to do here, right? Now, I get you and I pass you the pen and the paper, and whatever happens now, you write it, not me. Because when you write it, you're actually processing your own transaction that you're putting together. Sometimes what people do is they'll write up a contract or a deal and try to get someone to sign it. People won't sign it because they don't own it. They didn't develop it. They didn't produce it. They didn't create it. And then you spend an hour trying to go out with people who keep saying, I want to think about it. And you go, well, what do you want to think about? So there's a few things here. You never create the document. You always get the other person to create the document. Now, what I normally do at the same time is I go, I tell you what I'll do. Because you got your people, you silly me. I should create one for my people. So hang on. What's your name again? Well, John Brown. And now I start copying onto the other piece of paper exactly what you're copying on your piece of paper, and you can see me copying the exact same. And your head will keep looking at me writing what you're writing, and so I'm writing, and I'm virtually copying. I'm like taking sort of, you're leading the rope here. I'm just not in control. You are. I'm just the second man. Now, when I get to the bottom, I will sign mine. Right? Now, he'll see me sign mine, and then he will sign his, or what I'll do quite often is he'll just sign his when he sees me sign mine. But I won't say to him to sign his, right? I might just sign mine and then give it to him, kind of like, give me yours, right? And then he'll just automatically sign his before he gives me mine. That the other way I'll do it is I might sign mine and I'll go, catch, right? Now I'll do an underarm throw, and I'll throw the pen at the guy. Now, the process of the man catching the pen is the process of the man processing the transaction. So him catching the pen is kind of the same as he's signing it. It's just an easier way to go through someone's subconscious, because that, as they're catching the pen, the subconscious says to the conscious, and with this pen you sign the document. Okay, and so that's said without me being said. A couple of things while we're here, where we've got to be careful about. When we're buying properties and transacting property, there are figures involved. So, Cody, let's say we're doing a transaction and I'm buying your house or whatever it is. Whatever the figures are cannot ever be entered into a calculator by me, to which then I say, well, based on what we've agreed today, Cody, tap, 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 the figure is blah, 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 blah. Because you have what's called the inner cynic. It's built in. You can't control it. You're not 7. Under 7, you don't have the inner cynic. Past 7, you do. The inner cynic says you question 95% of all the information you get. So you believe 100% of what you say, but you're going to be an inner cynic about 95% of what I say. So therefore, it's very important that I say very few words. You produce all the information. So I always do things like this. What was the, I can't remember now, Cody. How much did we decide I was paying for your house? You'll go, $480,000. Oh, put that into the calculator. Then you put that calculator in the paper. Okay, and we kind of said I was going to make, did you say 60 payments? Yeah, 60 payments. Great. Put that into the calculator. Okay, put that calculator. Now let me ask you something. If you while you're there with the calculator, if you divide the 60 payments into the 400 thing, how much is it every month that I need to put into your bank account every month? $2,482. Let me ask you something. Do you prefer that goes in on a Thursday or a Monday? What happens is you've created the figures. You believe in everything that you create. If I create the figures, you're going to have a critical evaluation gesture that says, how do I know that what he just told me is true? I will have to do this again later when he's gone, so I better not agree on anything now because I haven't done my own calculations to verify it, and I don't want to say to him in front of his face, how do I know that's true? So to avoid all that, you get people to do the paperwork. They do all the paperwork. They do all the facts. They do all that. They actually create the transaction. I'm just there directing and pivoting how it's sort of put together.
All right. So I got a couple things I want to ask. And I should have started this podcast off with a disclaimer about this, because I think this information can be used for good or bad, and I'm going to hope that people.
Yeah.
I'm going to hope that people are using it for good. But so the first question, I guess the biggest question is, how do people generally feel after this transaction with you? If when you walk through this, do they feel that they made a good purchase or made a good sale, whichever one it is? I mean, how do people generally feel in these interactions? Because I think it's inevitable that somebody's going to listen to this and think of the word manipulation. So I just want to clarify, that these people they don't feel manipulated when you're working.
No, because the reason I'm telling you the story is for people to understand what subliminal science is. But the thing is, it's science. So you can say it's actually science. It's like body language. If I teach you about body language and you can therefore influence people because you know body language, is that manipulation, or is that just understanding body language?
Well, I mean, I think it's manipulation if you get the person to do something they don't want to do. I think if there's a mutual benefit, if the person is interested and there's a mutual benefit to both parties, I don't know that that's manipulation. I think that's what sales is typically.
Yeah.
But so
I don't think anybody's going to sell you a house that they don't want to sell.
Yeah, probably not. So that was the first thing I wanted to ask you. Also, the business card. I want to ask you about a business card because you're talking about documents. Sliding documents too close into this personal space. Would the same thing apply if you're handing somebody a business card? So if you intrude on somebody's personal space and maybe you're too close with that business card, I imagine the same message can be taken. As far as being invasive to the person's space. So if you
Well,
were handing somebody
if I use
a
a
business
business card, I
card,
probably wouldn't put it sort of right up to you. I'd probably put it here and let you reach out and take the business card
okay,
rather than, here, take my business card. So I wouldn't go,
right,
here, take my business card, because
right,
you're going to go, God, this guy's pushy,
yeah,
right? I'll probably just say, yeah, here's my business card, and then let you lean forward and
mm-hmm.
put your hand out and take it. So, for instance, if I go into a house, I'm never the first person to put my hand out and shake the other person's hand, because some people go, oh, that's a bit pushy salesman already. So I'll wait for you through social politeness to put your hand out to shake my hand.
Right. I got it. I got it. Okay. I want to ask you about this. Actually, I got two things I want to ask you about. I think we covered sales pretty good. I think we covered the sales process because we're going to be running close on time here in a minute. Do you? Okay. So we probably only have time for one of these questions, but I want to ask both. So advertising, I want to ask about subliminal and advertising. I don't know if you get into that at all. Like I'm talking about like advertising, billboards, and postcards and that kind of thing. Do you?
Yes.
Do you have
Well, all I
anything
can
to say?
say is this, okay, is ugly, I believe, outsells pretty, because everybody wants to get a bargain. No one goes out and says, let's buy the most expensive thing we can buy. Everybody goes looking for a bargain. A cardboard box on a stick, our brain says if it's a cardboard box on a stick, it'll be a bargain. That's why you see those garage sale. People always stop at a garage sale because they think a garage sale is a bargain. The cardboard stick idea will always outsell the $100,000 sign that the guy puts next door, because the brain will always see something that's rough and ready, says bargain, and for that they'll stop.
So that makes sense. Although I've heard in the past, I've heard the opposite of that. You hear that like what is the phrase? Like puppies or sex pretty much sells. So like a beautiful person, a beautiful woman like sells beauty products or whatever. And you hear those kind of things, but it makes sense with the bargain thing too. I do want to talk about this. I think this is going to be probably a good conversation for us. So we talked about on the sales end, and we talked about kind of being on that sales end. I want to talk about being on the end of a person who's maybe being aggressive or overly assertive with a person. Basically, I just want people to have a resource to understand how a person is trying to interact with them. So if we could kind of narrow down how a person could, like you're not going to manipulate a person. I'm not going to manipulate a person. Most people who hear this are not. But let's say that a person is on that side where they are being manipulated. How can a person protect themselves from this? In other words, what would be some signs to look for that a person is trying to be overly aggressive or overly assertive with you, or maybe is trying to steer you in a wrong direction? So we're talking about body language here mostly. So what's something that people should look for to not be taken advantage of in these situations?
Well, for someone who might be over aggressive, right? They get very pointy. They might go, now you should, like a school teacher, you should be doing it this way, and that's the way everybody else is doing it. And if you're not doing that way, you're wrong. So if somebody's over aggressive, it's I find it's more a case of saying, I call it for what it is. I'm really call stuff for what it is. I say, let me ask you something, John. I feel like you don't like me. And people go like they're just shocked. But I'm very nice about it. I'm always very nice about it. So, John, I tell you what, I'm just not too sure you like me, because my mum always taught me when I was a small boy to be polite to people they don't know. That just usually deflates the whole, right? Let me ask you something, John. When I was a small boy, I was just told to be courteous. People just deflates the balloon. The last thing you ever want to do is try to up the ante,
Yeah.
right?
Well, I think a lot of people would not be comfortable in that situation, fighting aggression with basically aggression.
No,
So
it doesn't
I
work.
guess I guess the question I'm asking is, how can a person, what are signs a person should look for that they might be in the interaction with the person who's trying to take advantage of them, specifically talking about body language and subliminals. So like if a person, you and I do this a lot, we talk to people a lot, we do sales a lot, but maybe a person who's not in that position, so they're trying to go buy a car or a house or whatever, what are signs that these people should look for to not be taken advantage of in these interactions? So the person who is a manipulator or being aggressive or whatever, we're talking about the other side of that interaction. So basically what I'm asking is, how can a person use the things that we're talking about here in a way to protect themselves from someone who might take advantage of them? That's kind of the question I'm trying to ask.
Well,
Like, what should they look for, basically?
okay. So, first of uh, it's hard because we're talking about hundreds of little elements, right? But
Right.
I'll give you a couple of basics. A person who's castling like this, who sits there castling like this, okay?
Yep.
And I'm getting very general here because we can get
Right.
really deep into the stuff. Someone who's castling, or someone who's doing the old head back, sort of rocking back on the chair with their hands behind their head, these self-confidence gestures that sort of say, well, I've won and you've sort of lost, right? And they're already thinking this, right? So, yeah, it's, do you know what it is? You have to say, I guess I could read it because I've just been doing it for so long, but it's just not one thing. It's what I said very earlier. It's kind of like you just get a gut feel that I'm not comfortable in this environment, right? And
Okay.
so it's just like there's a whole bunch of people, I'm not comfortable in this environment. Like, for let's say with that first room I talked in, that room's building rapport. We can't leave that room until we build rapport. And sometimes people say to me, well, look, when are we going to get talk about property? And I say, so you know what? I know it sounds really crazy, but I'm not too sure we like each other enough yet. And people burst out laughing because if there's no rapport, you can't go forward.
Right.
So people have to like it before they'll do business with you.
So, okay. So you mentioned your book that, I think you said you helped write a book that made a lot of sales, that was pretty popular.
Well, Alan Pease wrote a book. I was just an acknowledged contributor to it because I was involved in that. But that's $19 million. That book came out in 1980. Now that's a famous book.
Okay.
Called
I
Body
was
Language.
just going to ask. Yeah, I was going to ask if that kind of stuff was covered in that book, because basically, the main, a typical thing around body language, and when you talk about body language, subliminal science, and that kind of stuff, like I said, people look at it as if it's something that you could be used to manipulate people, which it can be. But the philosophy I have about it is it can be a shield or it can be a sword. It depends on how you use the information. And I think it's important for people to know about these things, to not necessarily even to use it in sales or to whatever, but to protect themselves from people who could possibly use the information if they're not aware of it. Like, if somebody's never heard about the stuff that we're talking about right here today, they could easily be taken advantage of by somebody who doesn't have good intentions.
And they probably have for hundreds and hundreds of years. So subliminal science did not start on Tuesday. Subliminal science has been around for hundreds and hundreds of years. It's just that we haven't been able to read it. Right. All I've done is said, listen, if you wanted to actually read subliminal science and understand what's happening to you and why you feel these are the elements that you can start to, like, it's just giving it to the man in the street like body language did, that said when somebody does that and does that, that means that. When they do that, that means that. When you stand with a girl, stand next to it, not opposite. Like today, I was just telling you about territories and zones. Right. Most people don't know about humans have zones. Most people don't know that tables, environments, houses have territories. So when people start to know that things have territories and zones and blah, now they go, well, I better make sure that I'm standing in the right room or in the zone. I'm not that. Why does that girl ever date me? Why do I turn women off? Because where you stand in proximity to is wrong. You should do that. Blah. So it's more the education. For then people know what people know. What people do with the information, well, you can't really control that.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, there's a lot there's a lot more people who do not sell things than there are people who do sell things. So most people are being sold something. Like most people are on the buying end of a selling transaction. You
Yeah.
know, if you I don't know if you narrow down however many salespeople there are in the world, you know, there's a small percentage of the population. So most people are on the buying end. So, and it's not just about sales either. It's about, you know, you meet somebody out in public, and I just want people to have the resources to be able to protect themselves from a person. Again, the small percentage of people who would use the information for bad. I just want people to have the resources to protect themselves from that. That's all I was getting at.
Yeah, the information I started to create was basically because the younger generation doesn't learn communication skills like the older generation who learned in the front yard and the backyard by playing with the kids in the street. The younger
Right.
generation doesn't play with the kids in the street. They learn on TikTok or a little device on their fingers. So the time they get to 18 and they have to interact with another human, it's the first time they've ever actually met other humans, and they freak out. And there's one thing the younger generation says is we hate selling. We all sell. Like everything you wear, the car you drive, the food you eat, the restaurant you go to, someone is selling something to you, an idea, a product, so it's the world can't operate around an environment that doesn't understand selling. And that's basically like understand communicating. It's just how you communicate.
Yeah. No, yeah, I get it. I get it. Like I said, I think you and I are and people kind of in our space are on a different spectrum because we kind of understand that part of it. But like I said, a lot of people don't do sales. They've never been in this situation in their life. And I think you're right, because I think like with the social media and the technology and stuff, is taking that personal interaction out of it.
Yeah.
You know, like we have these online friends or whatever, but a lot of them we've never even met in person, so we don't have that interaction with with that. Like you and I have never met in person, but we both kind of know about these things, so it's a little bit different. But if you have a person who's sort of been on social media, I mean, essentially their entire life, and that's how they interact with people, that they're not going to know these things. And then so when they go out to a place, they're not going to know.
No. And then they try to go to a bar. What happens is one of the things that the Western countries have as a problem is binge drinking, because all the kids either turn 18 or 21. They haven't had any social interaction. They're meeting people of the opposite sex for the first time. They're getting really stressed about it. And so we better get 6 shots as quick as we can to get buzzed with alcohol to feel more comfortable because I might have to talk to some girl or some guy and I haven't really spoken to any before except online. Right?
Yeah.
And so the younger generation has this binge drinking element that the older generation never really had. Just to get through the walls of communication that they just don't understand.
Yeah. Well, I think it's also too, it's not really just, it's not even just about sales, and it's not about protecting yourself. I think like communication is a basic skill that a lot of us are missing these days because of the online interactions.
Correct.
Texting a person or posting online is a very different thing from talking to a person in person. I'll talk to people on the podcast all the time, and they'll talk about, they enjoyed the conversation or whatever, but it's like, we're present for this hour with each other. We're present. I don't have a phone going off or anything crazy going on. Like we're talking, we're sitting here, we're communicating, but it's like, I feel like that's a skill that I don't know if we lost it or we don't use it as much because we're online so much, but, it's not just, so the key takeaways that I wanted to take from this conversation were the sales part of it, and then the protecting yourself from people who may use it for the bad, and then just the general communication, like how we use body. I mean, whether we're aware of it or not, we use body language in communication.
Can't help it.
Yeah,
you can't help it. But I wanted to get people thinking. People think it's about the words you use. It's not. 7% is the communication words. That's it. 38% is tonality. 55%, more than half, are subliminals of the messages that you're giving out. And most people don't know that. I've said, okay, if that's what they are, what actually are they? And then for people to understand what they are, the best thing is if I tell you a story of going through someone's house, now people can go, now I'm starting to understand what subliminals are, right?
Are you still with me?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah,
okay. All right. So let me ask you this, because I got to close in a couple minutes right here. What are you on? Do you have a website, social media? Do you have anywhere you want to direct people? to find out more?
Look, I think that one of the easy things people could grab my books. They're either on Amazon, but look, I tell you what, I'm going to give you a code. If people go to subliminalscienceforrealestate.com, at subliminalscienceforrealestate.com, I'll set it up so that your people can grab my books. And one of them's called How to Get People to Give You Money. It's all about subliminal science. And it was designed to be an easy read with lots of cartoons in it. So people can see the visuals, because people just click when they see the visuals. They go, oh, now I get what he says. Right?
Yeah. Okay. The one thing I usually ask everybody before we close, if you could share one of the most important lessons you've ever learned, what do you think that would be?
The most important question I think I've learned, and bar none, is if you understand that 95% of everything I say, people are going to be cynical about it. Only ever ask questions, don't deliver information. Because if I'm only asking the questions, it means you're delivering all the information, and you're going to deliver 100% of what you tell me. Therefore, it's more important that you talk instead of me talk.
Yeah, I like that. I just had a guy yesterday. His answer to that question was be interested, not interesting. Be interested in the person.
I think
that came from Dale Carnegie. I think Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People. But I mean, that makes a lot of sense, because you do find out about a person, and when a person feels understood, they're much more likely to work with you, like you, whatever it is. So I think it's all about being, understanding the person. I don't know how you can solve their problems if you don't understand them.
Well, and one of the things you'll see, I said tonight when I walked in, I said, these are the 5 questions I ask. It's always questions. I never ask questions. People deliver the information.
Yeah. I like that. Listen, man, I appreciate your time. I know we're kind of cutting a little short here, but I think we covered a lot. And if you can send me the links to those books, I'll definitely share them. I'll definitely share them, and whatever links you have. I'm going to stop the video and explain to you the upload situation, but I do appreciate the time and insight here today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Hey guys, I really appreciate everybody tuning in today. If you found this content or this episode useful and intriguing, you can visit us on social media. This is Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Rumble, YouTube, Spotify, Amazon Music, and Apple and Google Podcasts. Pure Wisdom Podcast on all social medias. You can interact with us, follow, like, and share there, and we will see you guys next time.